that's some of the footprints from the main site. And as you can see, they do look like someone just walking in sand across the beach. Anyway, as I was saying, that this isn't the only trackway. This is the clearest trackway, and it's the most detailed in study. And each time they've studied it, they have affirmed these are amazingly human-like footprints, but they are still, in general, assigned to Australopithecines. Just let me see if I can get my slides to advance. Here we go. Now, these are the new footprints that were reported in our newsletter. Now, they were found at the same time as the as those ones I've just shown you, in the other sites in this general area. But because they weren't as clear, they weren't as closely studied. But recently they have been closely studied, and the more colourful panel down the bottom is where they've done some 3D scans of these. You can do all sorts of wonderful computer scans these days to really study the three-dimensional shape of them. Now, because they weren't as clear, one of the suggestions was that they were made by bears. Now, I don't know about you, but why would you think that? Well, in fact, bears can walk on two legs occasionally for just a few short steps, and they will leave a triangular footprint, but it's much more triangular than these. But anyway, because that suggestion was floated, some scientists actually decided, well, all right, we'll test that out, and they did. At a bear sanctuary in North America, they managed to persuade some bears to walk in some soft mud enough to leave footprints, and they compared them with these footprints. And they found that, of course, bears do not have a big toe and a whole lot of little toes. They have some much more evenly sized toes, and these look nothing like bear prints. So, and even the evolutionists thought, well, it wasn't a terribly good theory, but good on these scientists for actually checking this out. So we'll give them credit for that. But anyway, these prints are they're a bit wider, but they are definitely human-like, and you can see the sort of the basis of a big toe there, particularly in the computer-generated ones. And I've got a closer pictures here from the original research paper that's recently been published. Now, Site G is the site that's been extensively studied, and they're the ones that are very distinctively human-like, and you can see that on the left-hand side of the photo. Site A is this site that was not as clear, that weren't studied as much, and this theory about, well, maybe they were made by bears has come up, but they've now been studied. Now you can see that they are wider and not as clear. But if we go back to the previous slide, if I can just get the there we go. Now, there's an interesting thing about this trackway. It's obviously been made by a two-footed creature, but if you look at it, you've got one foot in front of the other, almost crossing over, and that is a gait, that is as in a style of walking that bears can't do, even if they can walk on 2 feet, and neither can apes. So all of this evidence, and that is important, the actual evidence points to human-like footprints in a human-like gait. That's a style of walking. Now, if you can imagine someone who's picking their way over uneven ground through wet volcanic ash and maybe slipping a bit, all of that could be accounted for by this style of footprints. So assigning these to completely modern human footprints is not a problem if you're looking at the actual evidence, whether it be the Site G prints, that's the ones that have been extensively studied, and these Site A prints, which have only just recently been studied. But because the evolutionists are locked in to their evolutionary timetable, they're just not going down that way. And so what they decided was, well, these ones we've just studied now at Site A look different to the other ones. So it must have been made by a different hominin. So they keep on inventing more and more of these hominins, even though there are no fossil bones, no fossil foot bones at this site, and no fossil hominins anywhere. Now, if you want a bit of background about the Laetoli footprints, we have 3 different articles about them, which will help put together the story there. You might like to go to our fact file. What we do with our science reports in the newsletter, we archive them because they become a useful resource for people doing research. So they're archived individually on the creation fact file, and you can search for them just using a keyword search. If you go to the fact file, just put in Laetoli, you'll get several articles that will give you a bit more of the background.